All right, we are back. What is going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Your guys, Cody and Derek, back for another one, guys. Well, the Indianapolis Colts play football very, very soon. Under 2 weeks now for the Colts in their first official game of the season. We are approaching a week away, Derek, which is crazy. But, guys, we wanted to look ahead at the 2024 season and talk about some players that we believe will be some of the most improved players for the Indianapolis Colts in 2024. We did this video at this point last offseason, right prior to the regular season. So thought we'd bring it back, talk about it again, and talk about some players. We have 4 players today in mind and an honorable mention that we'll throw in there as well. So technically 5 guys that we're going to mention today. So be sure to give us your thoughts on the players we're going to talk about. Also, be sure to smash that like button, hit subscribe, turn on the notification bell, all that good stuff. Help us as we're making that push to 19K here on the channel. We are about 150 or so away, Derek, as we speak right now. So we're getting there, guys. So if you're checking out this video, you haven't subscribed yet, would love for you guys to be a part of what we do here because the season's just getting started and there's going to be a lot of fun. We hope you guys will join us with that journey. But with that being said, Derek, let's jump right in and talk about some of these players. Interesting enough, on our actual list, we have 2 offense and 2 defensive players that we're going to mention today. We got to start with the honorable mention, and that player is on the defensive side of the ball as well. And a player, Derek, that I think almost is like he doesn't have a choice. Like he has to step up for the Indianapolis Colts. Of course, we're talking about safety Nick Cross. Position, Derek, that we've been pretty vocal, and not just us, but multiple people been very vocal about this position and how the Indianapolis Colts did nothing really at this position in the offseason. It had left a lot of us scratching our heads on the why. And I think the answer to that is Nick Cross, this player we're talking about, right? And obviously a player the Indianapolis Colts loved when, they drafted him back in 2022. They actually traded up for him back into the 3rd round. They had 3 third-round picks. They traded back up and got Nick Cross into that 3rd round. And so, a guy that obviously had all the physical tools that you like. But Derek, when they drafted him, he was only 20 years old. So extremely raw, extremely young type of player coming out of Maryland. But Nick Cross so far, Derek, through his career, he hasn't seen the field on a consistent basis, right? He hasn't been a full-time starter so far through his first couple seasons with the Indianapolis Colts. Now, this season for the Colts, Derek, I think is the first time he will kind of go into this season as that full-time starter, right? We saw last year it was Rodney Thomas to start the season, and then as Rodney Thomas really was not playing well, he got benched in favor of Nick Cross, who played a majority down the stretch in the second half of the season and stuff. So this is the first opportunity, Derek, that Nick Cross goes into an offseason, goes into the regular season, knowing that he's going to be the guy. Right. And obviously we don't know 100% which position he's going to play all the time. Maybe him and Julian Blackmon kind of switch back and forth between free and strong safety. We've seen them both play both those positions. So we'll see on that. But I mean, Derek, Nick Cross, he has to get better. He has to get better. And, really, if he does or doesn't, I think that's going to dictate a lot about how this Indianapolis Colts defense looks.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, Nick Cross has to be better because his future with the Indianapolis Colts may depend on how he performs this year. I mean, I know he's an insanely young player, but there's so many question marks about the secondary in general going forward. And we're questioning whether or not the youth movement of this secondary is the right thing for this team going forward. And if Nick Cross is just another example of what can go wrong, then yeah, that could be a part where Indy's looking for something different. They may even potentially, Cody, go and get another safety in the draft this next year, somebody that's a little bit higher up in the frame and someone that they think might be more pro-ready. Because remember, Cody, 2 weeks ago, Gus Bradley wasn't even willing to admit that Nick Cross was going to be the starting safety for free safety for this team going forward. But you're right. This is the type of situation now. Nick Cross, we've seen him in camp. He's been doing pretty solid. He's had a couple preseason games where he's played some solid minutes. And we've even seen him with the option to potentially be at the strong safety position moving forward. So there's a lot of different circumstances for Nick Cross, but you've had a lot of question marks about you. And this is the type of year where, it's your time to step up and prove not only you belong in this roster, but you can actually thrive in this secondary. Because if you don't, like I said, there might be some future repercussions that, Nick Cross may be looking somewhere else in a year or two for a different landing spot.
Yeah, and I said it, Derek, and Nick Cross is a big reason for this and the uncertainty with him. But I mean, this is honestly, Derek, a position group in general that you could either feel really good about your future at this position, or you could honestly be looking for 2 new starters next year. Now, I don't know if probably more like 1 new starter at that free safety position, right? Depending on what they do with Julian Blackmon. But that's kind of the volatility of this position, is like you just still don't know if Nick Cross is that future player. Like the Colts obviously believed it when they traded up for him. But I mean, so far, Derek, you have more questions than answers with Nick Cross. So he's certainly got a lot to prove. And he's probably, if you have that players with the most to prove, he's certainly right there on that list. And so the reason we have it as an honorable mention is because we look at it and we say, he's looked decent. But again, the other players, we feel like there's more of a reason to believe that they will be better, in 2024. Now, Nick Cross still could be, and we hope he is, but this is more of like he has to be, almost. So that's why we have him on this list. But let's get right into it. And let's just continue on the defense, Derek. Continue with the secondary. Because like we mentioned, there's a lot of questions with this group. And, are we talking about how much it's going to hinge on some of these young guys? Let's talk about another young guy, the Indianapolis Colts presumed number 1 outside corner, JuJu Brown. And Derek, I know he's missed some time recently because he broke his nose and kind of a freak accident sort of thing where a cleat got in his helmet somehow. That stuff, that's just weird. Like that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But JuJu has missed a little bit of time here. He missed the final preseason game. But Derek, generally this offseason, it's been a lot more of JuJu Brown, right? He didn't have any offseason surgery. Didn't have any issues like he had, coming out of the draft last year. So he was there the entire spring, the majority of training camp in the preseason. He's had a couple, here and there sort of injuries, but overall, Derek, compared to his rookie season, JuJu Brown has had a lot more time in this system, alongside these other players. And so he's a guy that clearly has a lot of talent. He's got the size, he's got the athleticism, and he showed some improvements, I think, already in year 2, just like a lot of young players do. And we saw even glimpses last year in his rookie year. Obviously, the big question is, can JuJu stay healthy? That is still the lingering, overarching question. But I think, Derek, if he is on the field, we're just going to see JuJu continue to get better this year.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I think JuJu Brown has all the opportunity in the world to be a player that is one of the most improved players on this team going forward. And it's like the reasons that you mentioned. If he had a full off season this time around to be on the field doing stuff versus last season when he had that broken wrist and wasn't able to go out and do anything really tackling wise, like weightlifting wise, that maybe he wanted to for within the first couple weeks of training camp, wasn't able to go out there and wasn't able to really do a whole lot of anything else on the mandatory mini camp stuff. I mean, yeah, he was able to be out there and like do the non-contact stuff, but he didn't do any contact stuff until only a couple weeks before the season started. And, we saw how he attacked the field when he first got out there. I mean, it was so quick, so fast. I mean, he was so good right away. So this time around, I know he missed this last week because of the nose. And I know that earlier in mini camp, I believe it was, he had something that happened for like a week. But outside of missing, I mean, it's 2 weeks versus the span of 4 months. It's a huge difference there. So, I mean, JuJu Brown, for the most part, has been fully healthy this offseason and is ready to go now. And just like for a lot of players, it can mean a whole lot when a rookie who didn't have an off season to prepare for the season finally gets an off season where he's fully involved. It does a lot for them. So I think JuJu definitely is one of those guys that can take an even bigger jump than what he already was at last year.
Absolutely. Let's continue talking about another defensive player. And this guy wasn't a rookie last year, but Derek, certainly a guy that was very heavily scrutinized. I know that we, for sure, were on, very, very, I would say maybe disappointed in this guy last year, even though you look at the pure numbers and you're like, I mean, it was not too bad. But I mean, when you go dive a little deeper and talk about Kwity Paye and his season with the Colts, especially getting after the passer, it left a lot to be desired. I mean, it really, really did. And to his credit, Kwity Paye definitely made a major focus on getting his body right, getting himself into the place where, he dropped some pounds, he got a little bit faster, and, try to do those things in order to become a better guy at getting after the quarterback. And, so far from what we've heard in training camp and the time we've seen in preseason and, some of the joint practices and stuff, Kwity Paye certainly on paper, Derek, looks like a guy that will definitely show some improvement, here for the Indianapolis Colts. And, really when you look at it, he has an opportunity here to be the future other defensive end alongside of Laiatu Latu. He has an opportunity. Now, it's going to be a big if for Kwity Paye because, so far he hasn't been consistent at getting after the quarterback or really getting consistent pressure. We all know that he can stop the run at a pretty high rate, but, when it comes to getting the quarterback, it hasn't been spectacular. And when you draft the guy as high as you draft him, you expect him in some capacity to be able to do something as a pass rusher, and it hasn't been the greatest for Kwity. But he's worked on it, and so I think Derek, and it may not, I'm not saying he's going to go out there and have 15 sacks, but what I'm saying is I think you'll see some pretty big improvement from Kwity from what we've seen and what we've heard about what he's done and how he's focused, and some of the comments from people who have worked with him. I think Kwity Paye's set up for a potentially pretty big year, certainly better than last year. I think he certainly is due for a pretty decent size improvement. What say you?
Well, the one thing that you can consistently say about Kwity Paye is it's not even just been his consistency with continuously getting better and better each season. It's also been the availability factor of Kwity Paye over the last 2 years. I think in the last 2 years has only missed like 2 games so far, which is amazing given the fact that his first 2 seasons he missed at least 3, 4, 5 games. And then this last year was, able to stick around and didn't miss games and was actually available. And then you saw his sack numbers jump even higher. And there's just so many great things you can look at when it comes to that. And it gives you more opportunities to showcase your improvement when you're actually out on the field. So there's been improvement, which is why I think this is even more important that you're seeing us talk about his improvement, because we've seen him continuously improve, even though he's nowhere near what we hope he will be. He's improved each and every year because he's become more and more available. Now, if he stays at that availability, and from what, like you mentioned, with what everyone has said, he's lost weight, he's retained his muscle mass, and he's quicker, he's faster, and he's just as strong. I mean, that sounds like a player that is primed to be ready to take over on that outside. And like you said, with Samson Ebukam now out of the picture, at least till the very end of the season, Kwity Paye's role has no longer diminished. I mean, it's now Kwity Paye, like, you're not fighting against Ebukam and Latu for reps. Like, this is you now. Like, Tyquan Lewis is going to be there backing you up, but this is your role now. This is your opportunity because Ebukam unfortunately got injured. So show us you can be the opposite piece to Laiatu Latu. If you can do that, then we have something here. And from all accounts, we should expect Kwity Paye to have another jump this year. Like you said, it may not be the sack numbers jumping to an astronomical rate. I think Kwity Paye's limit is probably at that 10 to 11 sack mark. I don't know how much higher we can get on his sack numbers, but I'm looking for that efficiency of getting consistently to the quarterback. to get higher. If he can improve on that, then we have something special cooking up with this defensive end group this year.
Absolutely. All right, let's move to the offense. We got two players we want to talk about. One of the players is, a guy that I think, honestly, Derek, has gotten a lot of negativity, I guess, towards him, really the course of this last season, this off season. But a kid that I think has put in a lot of work. It's very obvious, and has made up his mind to become a more complete player. And, not just, from what we've seen, but I mean, even from the coaching staff, even from the GM, like Alec Pierce has really had a good camp. He's looked very, very strong. I mean, we know, Derek, what he's capable of with a quarterback like Anthony Richardson throwing the ball down the field. But it seems like, similar to Kwity Paye, Alec Pierce took the criticisms to heart. And he really put in the work and set his mind to becoming a better, well-rounded player in his game. And, while he may not ever be a quote-unquote complete receiver, Alec Pierce certainly is a guy that's due for some improvement this year. What do you think about Alec Pierce from what we've seen, from the plays that he's made during training camp, preseason, stuff like that? What do you expect from Alec Pierce and kind of his jump this year?
Well, I mean, from what we heard from, I think it was Shane Steichen today, even Chris Ballard saying it in his presser from the day prior. I mean, they both praised Alec Pierce and saying he's had his best camp by far. And one could argue he's had the best camp of anyone, is what they're saying. Like, even when you're talking about the players like Laiatu Latu and Adonai Mitchell, the rookies who everyone has had their eyes glued to. And no doubt, Adonai Mitchell has been lighting it up in camp. But, I mean, the Colts coaches and staff are looking at it and saying, Alec Pierce has done a lot in this offseason. And we were really hoping that he would, because we didn't want him to fall back in this depth chart. Well, from all accounts, like you said, Cody, he has not only retained his role, but he might have elevated it. I mean, based off of what we have seen. And we talked so much over the offseason about getting Anthony Richardson back and what that can do for Alec Pierce in this season, a quarterback that's actually willing to throw the football deep to Alec Pierce, who is a matchup nightmare for any cornerback that he goes up against. Doesn't matter if that cornerback stays with him step for step. Alec Pierce is 6'3" and has a 40-inch vertical. There ain't a lot of 6'3" corners out there that got a 40-inch vertical. So he has the size advantage. He has the speed advantage. He has the advantage of almost anything that he walks out there with. Just needs the quarterback to get him there. And if he is improving upon his route running, and he translates to the regular season what we've seen in camp, I mean, he could be the sneaky X factor for the Colts this year. We may not even be talking about it.
Well, I really hope for his sake that it translates, like you said. I hope it really does, because that would be a major help to Anthony Richardson and this Colts offense, to have a player like Alec Pierce, who we know he has all the traits to be a good receiver in this league. It's just putting it all together, continuing to improve from year to year. And if he can continue to do that, I think he's going to be a great option for the Colts, Shane Steichen, Anthony Richardson. And then we got to talk about, Derek, the player I just mentioned. And I think, Derek, if you look at a player that probably is like the definition of this, it would have to be your young quarterback, Anthony Richardson, right? Because, I mean, we've already seen, and we've talked about it in previous videos, talking about Anthony Richardson, like from year one, training camp, preseason, to year two, it's very obvious that Anthony Richardson has improved. Like, there's no doubt at throwing the football, going through his reads, his process, all that stuff. Anthony Richardson is a better quarterback today than he was a year ago. I mean, there's no doubt. And with a guy that's going to be 22, still, Derek, mind you, the youngest starting quarterback in the NFL for the second straight season, which is crazy to me.
Yeah.
Still a young guy. We know he still lacks experience, but Derek, despite the fact that he's only played in 10 quarters of meaningful football at the NFL level, he's still a kid that, despite that, has shown that he has the capability to grow. And that just makes you wonder if he can be on the field. If he can do that with barely being on the field, what is he truly capable of being on it? Like, that's what I'm really intrigued about with Anthony Richardson is like, if he is on the field consistently through the course of 17 games, how much better just naturally from playing the game of football is he going to get through the course of the season? I don't know. Like, he's still probably going to have those moments. We talked about this. He's going to have moments where it's infuriating, where it's like, come on, man, you got to hit that. Like, that's a routine throw, at the NFL. But he's also going to have the wow factor, which we know. But it really is, to steal a Chris Ballard quote from, I think he was talking about Carson Wentz, like, you got to take the layups. Like, he's got to learn to do those things, he can do the wow plays and stuff like that, but learn to make the routine throws, and do it on a consistent basis, right? Because he can. It's just sometimes it's erratic. Sometimes he has times where, his footwork looks a little bit sloppy, or, he panics or something. Like every quarterback has those things where, they kind of lose their mechanics and, all that stuff, where they just make a bad throw in general, or a bad read, or a bad decision, whatever it is. You're going to have that, and with Anthony Richardson being as young of a player as he is, and as honestly as inexperienced as he is, it's going to take time with him. But there's no doubt in my mind, Derek, that Anthony Richardson, despite the fact that he didn't play a lot of organized football last year, when it truly mattered, he improved that much. Only being on the field for not like a quarter of the season. How much better can he be playing the actual game with live bullets and live reps?
Yeah, I don't think I can really say it much better myself, man. You hit it on the head at the end there. We've talked so much about how he's looked in training camp and all these other things. And, it's great to see that improvement, but there's only so much improvement you can do when you're playing against your own team and in practice. The best thing you can do is get those live reps against people you're not used to playing against. And I think that is the true test, is to see what Anthony Richardson looks like at the end of the year. It's not about how he looks from games 1 through 6 this year. Honestly, he may have a lot of bumps in the road in his first few weeks of the season, but it's how he looks in those final few games of the end of this year. And does he look like a quarterback that is grasping a hold of the offense, is grasping a hold of the speed of the game, the processing of the game, and does he look like he's comfortable being out there on an NFL offense? Now, I will say this, in the 10 quarters we did get to see from him last year, I mean, Cody, I think he looked pretty dang comfortable at times, especially when he was being able to run with the football. I mean, there was a couple times, we're talking about this matchup between the Houston Texans here in a week and a half. I mean, people forget Anthony Richardson had 2 rushing touchdowns in the first 5 minutes of that game. I mean, the Colts were looking to blow the Texans out of the water before he went down with that injury. So, I mean, there is plenty of reasons to see why Anthony Richardson can do a lot of great things. I mean, we talk about the comeback against the LA Rams, right? Down 23-0. You came all the way back, especially in the fourth quarter, to do that. Like, you're telling me a quarterback that doesn't know what he's doing and is uncomfortable late in games would ever make that comeback? No, it doesn't happen. You have to get a quarterback that is calm in the clutch and the moment isn't too big for him. And he showed that in that Rams game, especially. Like you said, this season, he is not the finished product. I mean, we talked about it so many times already. He is 22 years old, and only next year will he most likely not be the youngest quarterback to start in the NFL, which is kind of ironic because he's still going to be probably the third youngest quarterback in the NFL at that point to start for a team. And he's been in the NFL for he's going to be entering his 3rd season in the NFL. So he's such a young player. He's got so much time to develop his game. Even at the end of this year, he will still not be where we could still see him become. So ultimately, there is so much room for improvement with Anthony Richardson, and it's only going to get better. But I think that is the part where he has to improve, and we know he's going to improve just how much does he actually improve? There's a lot of room for it.
Absolutely. Well, guys, that will do it for our look at some players who we think will be better in 2024 than they were in 2023 for the Indianapolis Colts. Let us know your thoughts. Are there any other players you would throw on this list that maybe we didn't include? Or is there a player you're like, I don't know if I put them on this list? Let us know all those things in the comments down below. Like I said already, guys, be sure to smash that like button, hit subscribe, turn on the notification bell, all that good stuff, because the Colts play in a little over a week their first official game of the 2024 season. We'll obviously be streaming that, be doing all that stuff coverage-wise for the Indianapolis Colts. So you definitely want to be a part of that. But guys, that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we greatly appreciate it. And as always, guys, go Colts.